Welcome to SFG Top Performance. Today we have our regulars, Jason and Charles. Then we have a guest speaker from our southern location, Taylor. Jason, what has been going on out in the countryside with soybean spraying, and where are we sitting today?
It's quite a change from our last podcast. Last podcast we were talking about it being too wet and too cold, and today we're talking about it being too hot and dry. So we've had quite a variation in our weather patterns this year, which has also caused a lot of problems with our chemicals, I guess we could say. Overall, the fields of soybeans I'll talk about that had a good pre-on, they still look really good. They're holding good, and it's time to post-spray them. But if what we preached all winter, if you could put a good pre-on, it's working great and looking really good. But the fields that didn't, there's a lot of issues with. We haven't had the rain, the weeds aren't growing like they should. It's hot, and things just aren't quite working like they should. And the residual chemicals we put out now, if we don't get a rain to activate them, they're going to be a little slow to work, and we could have some issues with that as well. But I think we're going to get a rain next week. It's going to cool off, and we should be in good shape with what we're spraying now to last a while. I have had a few little issues with some soybean spraying. We haven't had problems, but I've looked at some Enlist beans that had a little burn from some oils. It wasn't the Enlist that burnt the beans, it was the oils. By the time you put your Enlist has oil in it, the Volunteer Corn Killer has oil in it, and Roundup has surfactant in it, and then you add a little bit more oil to make things work a little better. There's a lot of heat in that, so with what we're spraying, there's a lot of heat in that, and with a 90 plus degree temperature, there's some oil burns from some of the Enlist. It's not the Enlist itself, I don't believe, from what I've seen, but there's some burns. I've also seen some beans that are cupping look like dicamba cupping, and there's been nothing sprayed. So make sure you're looking close when your neighbor says you burnt their beans or something. So corn, we're at the end of our 45 days for our pre. So the rows aren't shaded, and we're starting to see some weeds. So keep an eye on them in your fields, and we'll see how things go there. Derrick, this hot weather's affected a lot of things. We talk about fungicides in the heat. Talk a little about that for us, please.
Yeah, so this week we had a plot walk with one of our industry reps, and the big topic was how can we reduce stress in some of this heat pattern that we've been in. And one big product that gets thrown around is fungicides in general. Will a V5 to V6 application of fungicide, pay and reduce some stress in cornfields? And there's not a lot of data out in the industry that has positive yield benefits from the early application of fungicide. And right now with this dry weather, there's no fungicide out there. So it's a hard question to answer for sure. Whether fungicides, is it going to yield me more corn? But the biggest reason why it gets tossed around right now is for the stress mitigation side of fungicide, the plant health benefits. And the reason fungicides help plants is it reduces the respiration. So these plants, when it gets real hot, they're respiring water, pulling as much water they can to keep them cool, to keep them alive, and then they're curling up and protecting themselves during these hot, dry, 95, 100 degree days. So the theory is the science behind it, and the science is true that fungicide slows that respiration down. So you're conserving more water, you're slowing those plants respiring down, you're not losing as much. So those are the benefits from using fungicide. We haven't seen a lot of data that see if it works. So what do we do then? We take 10 acres and we go put it on a field, and we're going to see what happens. Charles got a trial sprayed yesterday, and today it's supposed to be 100 degrees. So we'll see. We'll see if the sun comes back out. It looks like there's a weather event coming through, so maybe we'll catch a little rain out of it. But if the sun comes out, gets 100 degrees, we'll see if maybe that corn isn't rolling as much in that 10 acres that we sprayed fungicide, and then we'll keep track of it, take some pictures, and see if it helped at the end of the season. That corn right now is at V7 to V8, so it's right on the edge of where the industry's going towards spraying fungicide anyway. The V10, V11 applications when corn's shoulder high. I think there's going to be some more of that as these fungicides get better and the residuals get better. So, it's still too early to tell whether fungicide is the answer for the early season stress mitigation, but it's something that we're looking at, and we'll have some more information. have some more information for you.
So didn't BASF there a year or two ago, they did a lot of like FLIR imaging on over fields for the canopy temperature, and there was a big difference in some of that, especially when they rolled out like the Revasol and that stuff.
Yeah, so those images, what they're showing is where the fungicide are spraying, it's staying cooler, in those areas, and just not stressing the corn as much. So there's a lot of that kind of data. We haven't, I guess I haven't seen it all the way equate into yield, but we'll see what. And anytime you can get that corn to not have a bad day, that's going to be better at the end of the season. So we'll see how it goes, and sure keep everyone updated. Taylor, what has been going on down at Centerville and in our southern Iowa region, or what have you been up to this spring and summer?
Well, the last couple weeks have been pretty busy. We're getting first round of spraying's pretty much wrapped up, so the second round of planting's pretty much wrapped up. We started off dry, turned off really wet for about 3 weeks, and then now we have turned off really dry again. So there was a lot of replant. The early stuff was all pretty good. That, the 5th of March on up until we got them rains, it just didn't work. Corn, beans, didn't matter. That stuff, it just didn't come up. So, but most of that replanting's all done now. We're working on a little bit of second pass corn, but for the most part, first round's getting wrapped up and everything's starting to look pretty good.
Sure, good deal. Yeah, from what we've looked around, it seems like anyone that got planted really early, even into the 40-degree soil temps, that sort of thing, that corn came up and looks good. It was that, you needed to give that corn a week lead time before that 3-week weather, it looked like, from the southern location. So it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge, but it's been something we were able to deal with. And a little plug, we have, as far as the replant goes, we have all of our seeds 75 to 100% replant. So I feel like our guys have been really taken care of down there, and everybody's sitting better than they were 2 weeks ago, I guess.
That's right.
So, but
Definitely.
Jason, what's going on up in the northern locations?
Well, we didn't have nearly as much replant as Taylor had down south. Our corn looks fairly well. About a week ago, 5 days ago, the corn started to roll in some of the areas. The ground that was no-tilled or had minimum tillage is still looking pretty good, but the corn that was plowed, or even some of the cover crop fields that were burnt down, were starting to curl. But I've noticed at night there's been a lot of moisture in the field. There's a lot of dew, and they're unfurling, and they're starting to respirate. So I think the corn's, it probably has lost a little bit of the top end, but they always say 300 bushel in that top of the bag, so we're down to 200 now. So I think everybody's still going to be very happy with 200 bushel corn. So let's hope we get this rain they're talking about in the next few days. And the beans, they seem to be in that stunted stage. They're starting to grow, but it's slow. There's less than 50% of the 15-inch rows canopied in a lot of cases, and definitely not a lot of the 30-inch rows canopied. So, but they're going to grow. We get a little moisture, and they're going to look like different fields in a week. So it's time to get the chemicals on them before they are canopied, while we can still get coverage. So I think for the most part, things are still looking pretty good. Dicamba spraying, most of the beans have been in the ground just about 45 days. So it's time to get them sprayed. We need to make sure we're getting a good residual on them. We talked about, the dry weather. That's kind of a double-edged sword, like the Outlook products. They don't take as much rain to activate, but also they won't lay as long on top of our dry soils. Where the Zidua-type products take a lot more rain, but they'll lay much longer on top of our soil. So that's a double-edged sword as to what to use. And if we could predict the weather, we'd be way farther ahead. So, Derrick, talking about predicting things, we use the field forecasting tool a lot. Can you talk a little about that and what you've been doing there?
Yeah, so the past couple weeks with field forecasting tool, we've been taking the first round of tissue samples. Some of those samples are taken after. We're putting on nitrogen just for a monitoring system, or some of these tissue samples are taken to actually give us recommendations to see what we want to do for top dress. So been chewing through a lot of those, and really the samples have come back kind of as we would expect right now. The good fields really aren't showing they're short in a lot, and I think that's because we haven't had the weather to move the nitrogen out. Even that 3-week wet period, we only got 3 inches of rain or something, and it came even. So we haven't moved that nitrogen through the soil profile, so it's it's still there. In this dry weather, it hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, tiles are still running, but the nitrogen hasn't been pushed down. So that's a good sign that it's still going to be there when we need it. We just need a little bit of rain to get that water going up through the plant. I'll pull up a tissue sample just to kind of show everyone what it looks like. But really, right now, from our samples, like I said, we've kind of the results have been as we expected. The good fields are really NPK across the board is good as long as the dry fertilizer is taken care of, and really the micronutrients are what we're missing. I'm looking at one right now that about the only thing in the deficient is boron, and that's something in season you can still fix boron. Boron's needed at reproductive time, so when you're tasseling, if you're throwing on a fungicide, you can throw boron in with it, and that really helps both corn and beans. So it's a late season micronutrient, and it acts like nitrogen does where it moves around. So if you put boron on in the fall, you probably don't have boron for your late season. So it's something to think about for in-season applications. And we have ways that you can put that on with spray, or we can have ways you can put that on with our dry fertilizer, or if you do fly on fungicide, we can put that in with the fungicide. So that's what's going on in the tissue sample camp right now. We're making recommendations for in-season nitrogen. That's been a tough conversation with this 3 weeks of dry weather, and a lot of guys pulling back on that. But I just want to caution everyone, especially if it was already planned and you've only had 140 pounds of nitrogen or something up front. You don't want to leave this crop, because a dry June doesn't necessarily mean no crop. There's still a lot of time left, and there's a lot of good looking corn out there, even when we get into our tough areas. I mean, the droughty light soils are rolling up more, and they're getting hurt a lot, but I bet you that's still less than 10% of the fields out there. There's a lot of good looking corn and a lot of potential still here. So don't give up on the fields, because once corn's shoulder high, it's a lot harder to get in to get something put on, and then it will start firing. But Charles, can you give a equipment update, or where are we at?
And like I said, on the side dressing, we're caught up as in what everybody's let us do for side dressing urea. Of course, we were planning on doing more. Now guys are wanting to wait a day or two before it rains, so if somebody can figure that out, we'd be in pretty good shape. But we're in pretty good shape that way. The nitrogen, liquid-wise, it's all done. Most of the guys are done with that. We may have 1 or 2 fields, maybe. Some guys will do some late planting stuff, but we'll just see how that works out. Probably 95% of the corn, I'm guessing, sprayed the second time for us up here, and probably maybe 20 to 25% of the beans are sprayed. This week we're finishing up dicamba. We'll have that done by the weekend here. Maybe it'll rain and push us back, but not holding my breath on that one. But anyway, we're keeping things going. So you can't get a better season for getting it done. I guess we haven't been crowded and get way behind. No big rain events were slowed us down, but it's just been steady Eddie. So
you bet. And as far as the top dress machine goes, we've been doing some calibration this week. I've kind of heard through the grapevine. How low a product rate can that machine go for us?
It should be at that 68. Is it 68 pounds you were wanting there for the AMS? And it's supposedly they got her dialed in yesterday, and he hasn't taken it out in the field. We were going to put some on yesterday, but we thought it was too hot. We needed to wait closer to the rain, I guess, versus having this big day. It's supposed to be, like I said, darn near 100 today. We didn't think that would be very good.
Sure.
That might have a pretty good burn, or maybe it wouldn't. We didn't want to find out, I guess.
Exactly. No, so with that low rate, we're able to put on 30 to 40 pounds of nitrogen. So even if your crop, you just want a little bit of boost, you don't need to be putting 70 to 80 pounds. We have the capabilities to just give it a little extra boost. But if anyone doesn't have any other updates for the week, I appreciate everyone tuning in to SFG Top Performance, and we appreciate your business thus far this season, and we appreciate any future business we'll have in 2021 and in the future.